Hey everybody, welcome back to the last class of the week every week where we do summarize what's happened in the markets, sectors and industries, as well as the stocks themselves. And a lot to look at this week. Some interesting indications with the breadth of the market. Clearly some interesting insights there, as well as the pullback we had with the starting up of, the bombing of Iran again that influenced oil, which can influence inflation. So a lot of different correlations to discuss here, but very much looking forward to it. Great to have you all here on board with us. Hello to you, Jenny, Michelle. As a matter of fact, I was just chatting with one of the producers here about biking, who is also another big biker, and that's one of the things we do discuss. But absolutely, I probably got about three or four pictures already for you guys, but I do have some I like to post on X. Be sure to follow us on X too. Cameron May CS. Cameron's on board with us, a great friend of mine, colleague. I've been together with him a couple decades, at least very dang close to it, at least 19 years. But yeah, I'm going to post some of those to Mike Fairborn CS as well. Just mix it up a little bit. Finance and nature, maybe something like that. But yeah, thanks for asking. Absolutely. Looking forward to it already. Pretty much right after our discussion, I might just go biking. So, hello to you, Austin. Great to have you on board. Life in the Fast Lane. Got the great title there, as well as Trader Joe. Hello to you, Will. Will, the sunset guy, does like those sunsets, as well as Riceberg, Olga, Sharon, welcome. Jay Richardson, howdy to you. Michael BJ, folks, we got a few of us here today. Awesome. Good to have you on board. So, any questions, comments, throw those in the chat so we can address those for you. I'll keep an eye on that, but some interesting stuff to look at today. Let's get into it because I do have plenty to discuss. So, some disclosures to get us rolling here. Okay, material here is intended for general information purposes only. Paper Money software application is provided for educational purposes only as well. Now, investing involves risk, including loss of principal for some products and strategies, loss of more, and for some products and strategies, loss of more than your initial investment. Do have the futures slide deck, disclosures here because we do look at the charts and the charts only, but just wanted to state futures and futures options trading does involve substantial risk, not suitable for all investors. Just a final note in here too, historical data should not be used alone, not used alone when making financial decisions. The Stacks is not a tradable index. And we do have actually some details on the Stacks that I wanted to address with you all as well today. So, having said that, let's get rolling. And we talked a little bit about last week. Hey, what happened to our triangle? Some people were calling it a wedge. They're correcting me and saying, it's not a five-way move. Looks like a triangle to me. Hey, call it a wedge too. Wedge is kind of all-encompassing, right? But there you have it. We kind of broke above. What happened to our channel lines? I'm not certain, but let's pull it up right now and just see. Let's just draw a line right through here. That was where we were holding and we dipped. Okay, so I do know there was some bombing, that occurred well, this week within Iran specifically, and that did influence the markets. Now, specifically, you look at this and you say, well, if I go back, Mike, I'm not seeing anything the last 5 days. It was only really today. We did see some bigger moves today, but it was mainly in the semiconductor group. In fact, a good quick way to do that, I'm going to go right over here and just highlight this for you. Market Watch, really, because that's what broke us down a little bit today. We're going to go into quotes and go over here. This is not, I don't want the S&P 100. I want the NASDAQ 100 though. And it's going to be right about here. Okay, the very top. There we go. Okay, so if I click on it again, there you go. So, these are some of the bigger movers within this group today. This is what's really accounting for some of the move. I'm going to look at the S&P 500 as well. Wow, that's way over there. Anyways, I'll try to narrow this down a little. There we go. Bring those closer in. But yeah, information tech in the 100. You got healthcare number one, Intuitive Surgical. That's the robotic arm company that helps do surgeries with the robotic arm. There must be some sort of technological change or advancement, and AI is just what I'm thinking that could be impacting that because that had been amazing for so long. Come down here and you just see a lot of information technology. I'm gonna actually see, what might have really dipped. This is just a great way to see what dipped the S&P because it had been holding up all week long. Well, somewhat similar, isn't it, in the S&P 500? Let's just highlight some of these so we're aware of maybe what has occurred over here. You can see just like this group here. And Information technology, obviously on the high end. You got Netflix too, really kind of dipping 7% today in Netflix. Okay. That's one way to do it. Remember, the market is a weighted average. So these might have, although they're bigger moves, they might not have such a giant impact actually on the movement of the market, up or down. Only there's a good way to see that. Just go to the visualize tab. And now we could see the size of these represents, and that's a big one, right, for Alphabet, right in the middle there. Got Alpha, basically the Mag 7, which had been looking good all week, but down. In fact, you still have Apple in that darker. Where are we up on Apple? What's it? It's still a darker green. You got Nvidia down, right? Meta. You got Microsoft, um, Broadcom, which is not a Mag 7, but it kind of, it sort of fits into that area. So it's a large cap, and then you got this right here. MU is actually up today, but look at this. If you're going to get that much weight, just try to visualize it now, just the size of what I've just put in here. I'll just go ahead and draw this. Look at that. That, folks, is a big block. The rest of the 500, I know there's some that are mixed in here, but like the vast majority of this over here, I don't care how down they are, how up they are, they just don't have an impact like nearly this over here. In fact, they were saying that I think the Mag 7, don't quote me on this right now because there's not these numbers do change, but it was something like on the tune of, and you can see it here, but it accounted for something like 47% of the move of the S&P 500. And what do you see here? Technology, yes, technology, Apple, and that's up. Technology, technology, clearly technology, 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 technology. Amazon certainly the bulk of what it brings in is technology, but just a really good way to use these maps, these heat maps, to give us a sense of what is going on. As you've noticed, despite the Iran situation, we were holding up nicely, but bam, today it was really the Mag 7 that did it to us. I'm going to pull that up left-hand side. Just add them all together. Apple Plus, da da da, Amazon Plus, Plus, Plus. There you go. It's a pretty versatile symbol box, you have to say, to do all that. But that is your Mag 7. Now, do you see here when this drops? Anticipate, because we just talked about, okay, approximately is what it was, 47% of the moves of the S&P 500 in this basket because it is market weighted. Look at that. We were actually doing pretty well. Last 4 days, holding up above on the S&P 500 triangle pattern, holding up pretty good until today. And that's the dip right there that you're seeing. All right. But all else equal, folks, if I just rewind, go right back to the beginning, and we just say, we kind of put this in context. We talked about seasonality in this class before and the possibility of maybe the summer rally, July to the end of August. That can happen, right? But as we look at this and zoom in, I really want to talk about markets because consumer inflation came in a little cooler than expected. I don't know if you guys caught that. The CPI numbers were down. We started off the week on a positive note. Right over there. I'm going to zoom in. I want to go through and dissect this so we have a really good understanding, of what's been happening this week. Okay, so the war in Iran was kind of kicking in gear, like I know you could say like right over here, right? Uh, yeah, that's fine. That's Monday. But it was a mixed bag because we had consumer inflation numbers with the CPI coming in a little bit lower. So that did provide some relief and it kind of helped us hold up a little bit better there on the top of that triangle. And I think that was an interesting thing because it was such a mix in the market this week. By the way, quick note, if I just zoom in over here, remember, if we just go technology heavy, ooh, those last 5 days were not nearly as pretty. I mean, they were down, down, down. You could almost say right now, one, two, three soldiers down. I mean, that is a big candlestick pattern that you have to keep your eyes on because sometimes you tend to bounce after three soldiers down. Okay. You can see that. Not every time, but it's just a candlestick pattern. Here's an interesting example right there. You kind of bounced. And this one too, ooh, very close to a three. We just had it again here, right towards the bottom. We don't know if it'll bounce here, but the longer term trend, folks, clearly holding, to the upside here. Now, with that Iran war, because I want to hit this big picture, what happened? As we break down what happened this week, well, Oil prices jumped and /CL. Now, when oil prices jump, the normal economic correlation is this. Uh, Energy up like this, which was a decent bounce. In fact, let's just throw out percentages off this bottom. But I want you to be thinking about we had an early offset in terms of cooling of inflation, which was a positive, but then there are expectations of inflation maybe going forward. That's actually up. Look at that, 21%. Not okay. How about this week? Right. So as we're looking at this week, from the Friday, the last Friday to where we are right now, that's real close to 15%. So what can that do? What can higher oil prices do? I mean, just the expectation. Remember, markets are always forward looking. So if we see oil going higher here, the expectation could be that it could continue on up. And if that's the case, it could ultimately first hit areas like the transports, the big industrials. Obviously, it could make its way through the economy. What is the economy? Well, we got a good sense of that economy, and that would be the S&P 500, right? S&P, because we have 11 sectors within there, and inflation can be an issue. But this is all kind of a result of, you know, that Iran war situation just kind of picking back up again. So be mindful of that. But the economic data is strong. In fact, as I just look over here and some of the notes I took, retail sales were up. Jobless claims remained low. That's a positive. Generally good news for the economy, you have to say. But there was an expectation too. I'm just going to throw this out. They already started publishing this as we think about what could be happening going forward here. I wanted to post this to you guys on X so you could see it right over here. Just a couple of these. I just hit them. Consumer sentiment, by the way, consumer sentiment. I don't think I refreshed that. No, I didn't. Okay. The top one is this. Yeah, the Fed watch, the Fed hike probabilities. That came in a little bit blurry. I apologize for that, but the print here. But you want to be thinking about this. They're just saying, the Fed rate hike probabilities per month, July, September, October, December, 10%. You can see it just kind of creeps up. By December, we're going to get a hike. They're saying like, yeah, almost 75% chance of a hike by December. So some of that economic data was offset with, the reduction. Oh, geez, I'm sorry, folks. Let me just pull this down here. The reduction in the CPI numbers, but that would be something to kind of consider too. So I don't know. It's sort of a mixed bag. It's going to be interesting to see how that does unfold there. Yeah, if folks, by the way, just a quick note, if you're getting value out of this discussion, smash that like button. Let's Cam and I know the presentation is a value for you, but only if it's a value. And then be sure to follow us on X, yeah, Cameron May CS, Mike Fairborn CS. I clicked off of that a little bit too soon. Let me just show you one more data piece in there because we did have some good numbers that came out today that were a surprise, and that's what actually bumped the markets back up a little bit. It was, if I could do this without clicking on it again. Okay, so it was, oh yeah, we're going to get to the equal weight here in just a second, but the consumer sentiment numbers, they surprised to the upside. So the estimate was 51. The actual came in at 54 and change. Close to 54 and a half. That is exactly where I just was watching the market very close at this time. But we saw a bounce over here. Particularly, I saw it in the NDX, which I did have eyes on at the time. We were off this 30-minute chart right there. Sentiment went up. So it's really sort of a mixed bag, but we are getting some of that data coming in. Now, earnings had been pretty good too. Let's turn some attention though to sectors. See how we're doing over here in the chat. Pretty good. All right, awesome. And let's do this. I'm going to go right in here. Let's just do the grid first off. So here's a look at our 6-month view of just the performance, general performance on the chart, how they're doing individually. A couple of standouts here too, as you can see. Financials have actually came in pretty strong, and they kicked off the week with earnings. If anybody was watching the financials, pretty good move over here. The financials, the banks basically had strong results in trading and investment banking. So you're really within that group. I mean, we were looking at I'll pull them up right now so you can see the charts because some of them have been kind of breaking out a little bit. JP Morgan. JP Morgan broke out above a range and kind of retested right now. Weekly chart, it looks like that. So maybe a weekly, oh, well, if you put it that way, shoulder, head, shoulder, breakout, retest prior highs. Interesting to see. But they reported strong numbers, and I'll tell you who else did too. Within that group, it was really just kind of the large banks that were out there. BAC, breakout, GS. Breakout and kind of a slip though, right on GS is down today, and Morgan Stanley a slip as well. So really kind of JP Morgan, Bank of America in that group, but that kind of helped to support the index. Now, I wanted to look over here. I should actually have this pulled up on a secondary chart, but it's okay. Grid charts are fast that way, right? You can just click back and forth. Energy started to run a little bit. So keep in mind that'll move up almost very, very frequently, if not virtually a lot of the time, um, with higher oil prices. Concerns also about supply of energy. Now, if we do this, and I wasn't really gonna, let's see, by the way, uh, yeah, you'd also get in there oil transport companies. They can be positively affected due to just more demand, or I should say less supply could actually push it up a little bit. But quick note, if I do this right now, you guys, there's this interesting thing. I'm going to use my little drawing tool here to highlight this because this is just kind of my own sort of investigation into this. If we did, and I'm not going to do a great job of this, but it will give you a general idea. So if we're looking at kind of like the Straits of Hormuz over here, and this is the land area right over here, and you've got kind of Iran up top here. It runs along here, something like this. Anyways, so this area here is the waterway, and this accounts for about 25% of the oil supply. Okay. Now, if you look down here and I'm going to kind of minimize this a little bit, but let's say this is like Yemen and the peninsula, right? That they have over here. There's that no another really small waterway over here by Saudi Arabia, and it's fascinating because this is something, honestly, of upwards of like another 30 to 35% of global oil supply. Think about that. Those two ways right there. Now, what's been happening just geopolitically on a big, big scale is you have Saudi Arabia, that is, located over here. Saudi. How about S for short? I'm not going to spell that out. But there's this waterway, right? They ship it through here. But what's happening is there are like these sales, they call them, that Iran has. Iran up here, like the Houthis down in Yemen down here. I'm gonna go ahead and just spell that one out. But they've been bombing these areas right through here, is what's been happening. Why have they been bombing them? Because they're now trying to close this down, this little stretch. Now, what is that? I'm forgetting the name of that stretch. Obviously, we all know the Strait of Hormuz. At this point, folks, these are big numbers over here. Think about it this way. 55, 60% of global. I mean, if you look at both, that's massive amounts of in terms of global oil supply. So the two straits over there from basically that neck of the woods. And so that's what Iran's doing. He's saying, if we do this, then we'll do that, or you bomb our infrastructure. But I'm pointing this out, just drawing you a quick little map, but to highlight the fact, oops, sorry, back to oil, just park that in the back of your minds. If something were to come up over there and that were to be like antagonized, by the way, that stretch of land is much, much smaller than the Strait of Hormuz, which is actually quite tight too. This is a lot smaller, and they're bringing even more oil through there, and that's Saudi Arabia. And so Saudi Arabia themselves are bombing those Iranian sort of cells. Just wanted to give you that note. Okay. But yeah, just watch that. Just keep that in the back of your mind because it's something we want to be mindful of. I want to say this before I leave energy, and that's this right here, as we're talking about sectors, energy specifically. That could be a fairly decent resistance level. The one thing I do like to do on this is just go over here, go to my Fibonacci's. Um, I tend to draw it off the closing prices. I think the market pretty much rejects these upper levels, and the closing price can be a very, very important point. We have a closing point and a number of touch points right there. That is oftentimes where you'll find the Fibonacci's might line up a little bit better. So you can see that you've got a fib right here, and that's the 38.2. It's very, very, very close to that gap down as well as the prior level. That level right there, there could be resistance, and we don't know. If you break down here, I mean, if you bounce off it, come down, you might dip again. But again, it's going to be tied into news, to be honest with you. I mean, a lot that could influence anything. So, wanted to hit that for you folks. What else did we have over there? Well, we had healthcare moving. And what did healthcare do? Healthcare did a few things. Thank you. Let's see. Yes, you got the names down there. I think they're, yeah. Jenny Michelle has the Arabic name, but I think it is like, yeah, the Red Sea through. It's really, really tight, right? But yeah, if that gets blocked off, I mean, then all of a sudden you're like, whoa, what do we, I don't know, did we break above the highest levels that we saw? So it's just something to park in the back of your mind. I think there's going to be a lot of sort of attention. Perhaps you could say firepower on that neck of the woods to keep that safe because there's a lot at stake there. A country's sort of lifeblood, that oil for them as well. So we'll see. But there you go. I did notice that there were drones now, Saudi Arabian drones over that area. Uh, sort of like these bombing type drones. So yeah, a few things going on. Um, all right. So healthcare was strong. But we did look at Intuitive Surgical as being the biggest down mover in the S&P 500. Take a look at this over here. If I really zoom in on this, just the chart alone, you're going to see maybe a series of a few things that traders do like to see. And there's kind of a trajectory of this or a history of it too. Flag, flag, flag. We've been rallying off of every single one of those flags. Now with healthcare, held up pretty good. Abbott Labs, United Healthcare, I'll pull them up right now. I realize we're going back and forth a little bit, but I wanted to show you the charts. ABT, Dividend Aristocrat, by the way, raised their dividends at least 25 years consecutively. Remember, dividends aren't guaranteed, obviously. Dividends can be cut at any time. By the way, these guys are, this is a dividend king. They've raised their dividends beyond 50 years consecutively each and every year. So, just a little side note there, but there's the move and better than expected earnings. Now, we've been down for a while on this stock. And by the way, we did just break a downward sloping trend line. So it has been in the news this week. Look at that. Did we touch off it? Sometimes it'll come right down and touch. Do you see it? You'll break, and that again will be your diagonal support. I mean, if you're going to have outstanding earnings, yeah, that's going to play the key role. But it is fascinating how it touches a lot of the times. But this could be one that traders might keep an eye, traders, investors, they may keep an eye on. The reason being, we have been down a little bit in this stock. And as you see over here, we came up to a big round number. Easier to see it this way on the weekly. Sometimes, not every time, but sometimes it can act as resistance if you're below it, and we are just below it to the tune of about 8, 9 cents. But if you can get above it, folks, if you can get above it, sometimes they can hold there. Do you see what I mean when I say that? Sometimes the big round number, 100, 100. I call it hundo sometimes, but there you go. 100. Yeah, right there. 100. Stop, stop. Do we have historical resistance here too? We absolutely do. Now, is that a bad thing? It's tough to get above, and we've been challenged today, but if you can get above it, resistance can and oftentimes does become support, particularly with what? Positive earnings could be one. Earnings can oftentimes turn this trend. Keep an eye on it. I mean, if you want. I mean, it's just one of those that, and my guess is it's been down so much. A dividend aristocrat, a dividend king. What am I doing? Let me go back to where I was. Just going to go back to this. Just start it over. A dividend king in ABT. Um, you can imagine, just sticking with the dividend theme for just a second. We don't get into dividends too much. We already read the disclosure on it, but think about it this way. If they've been raising their dividend this whole time, let's just verify that's 63 cents. See it right there, 63, 63, and oh, okay, 63. Let's keep going back. Let's make sure it's, you gonna show it to us here? No. All right. Well, have to go back further, but yes, to my knowledge, they've been raising it still, and so the dividend yield is likely. I mean, if prices go down and you're raising the dividend, I mean, there are two factors right there that gonna pump up the dividend yield. So let's just take a look at that real quick while we're at it. 2.55. Okay. Hey, 2.5%. Interesting. Was it just a lot lower over here? Maybe not historically the lowest, but you'd have to say over lasted a while, about 2.5%. I guess traders in most cases would just be looking for a bounce or a turnaround or whatnot. But there you go. I want to throw that out there to take a look at. The other one in healthcare, kind of helping the group in general, UNH. We have this very, very long-term swing trade that we do from sometimes in the swing trade class on Tuesdays. And here is an example of another one because the stock is just moving really slow, but it's still inching its way up here, as you can see. Target right into this range, but a very, very strong trend. In fact, this was an excellent sort of a indication that some traders would look at. When I say excellent, I mean they like a flat flag pattern, referred to as a bull flat sometimes, but you can get like that retracement. As you guys can see, the price retracement I'm making here. Price to price, 500 might be an area. That's a big round number. I mean, you might want to even watch that first. But that was the target range. Anyways, interesting. Healthcare was going. Transports, by the way, did you see some of the transports out there? Delta had pulled back. Very much in tune with oil. UAL flagging. It's sort of a play on oil. This whole move over here is really interconnected to oil. Inversely, that is. Okay. Oil down, transports up. It gets back to that inflation that we were talking about and how that inflation can impact normally first up transportation companies. These guys, huge component, obviously, of their businesses is oil, energy. They're all flat. There's American Airlines. Let's just go with the wild card here. How about JetBlue? Same thing. JBHT, outside that range, it's a transport. And can you see it right there? Right at 300, actually showing strength. This was one that actually did hit one of our swing trades very nicely too. Hit it a couple times. Well, yeah, a couple times right there. But breaking above again, how do you get those breakouts? A lot of times, if you've been flat, what's going to get it higher? Maybe an improvement in the company, raising ultimately that value up higher. It's not a perfect correlation, but that can be the case. Look over here with me. We were flat for a long time. Change in maybe the underlying fundamentals of the business maybe lifted us on that new trajectory right there. Okay, and lastly, I just want to hit today. I mean, Netflix dipping again. You guys saw IBM this week as well? We'll pull up IBM. This was actually a really, really strong move on Netflix, and it had volume too. But it was all kind of, gosh, tied to that earnings, wasn't it? You got to say, if earnings was great, maybe it would have done something different. But there you go. IBM, let's hit that one. While we're at it, just to kind of finish up on technology case. So there's the move down there. But I wanted to highlight this. In fact, I've got some other stocks to look at. But before we look at the stocks, I still need to break down. That was the big dip on IBM. IBM has said that they were too slow in ramping up or getting up to speed on a few things. And by the way, I think there was a delay in some of their departments. So the funds that they had not been able to report or will be able to report here, uh, the profits or whatever earnings, it might be a short-term thing where they can report it down the road, semi-short term. Maybe it's another earnings cycle. Maybe it's another one after that. The reason why I wanted to focus in on this, folks, is I want you to all park this in the back of your mind. Okay. Let's look at the weekly here in terms of market risk. Now, it is in kind of that area where a lot of volume obviously can make a huge, I should say a lot of volatility in technology and what we're seeing in technology, because you'll see a lot of these AI stocks. I mean, they will gap down 20%, some will gap up, but it's a mixed bag. Really positive results, sometimes really negative reactions in the market. And the thing I really wanted to highlight here is, did this come around? Did this come at earnings? No, this happened before earnings. You'd have to say there might have been a few folks caught off guard on something like this. In fact, this big upward move, just looking at technicals here, we pulled back. There was a little bit of a gap down there. Look at this rally. And this looks like, could be, a little bit of a bull flag pattern ready to go. Anticipation of earnings. There were probably some that maybe thought that. Here is your look. I had to pull this volume up because that hit. Yeah, I'd have to say there might have been a few people surprised there. That 67, roughly and a half million shares right there. Quick note on that. That's why a lot of traders and investors who've been around for a while, they said, don't put all your eggs in one basket. That was painful to even see, just knowing what's going on behind the scenes. That's 25 and change percent dip in a day. It did come back down to support, but there you go, ahead of earnings. So kind of a pre-announcement there. All right. Now we're going to get into some interesting stuff here. Remember this? SPXEW, the equal weights. SPXEW, there you are. I sent the tweet out on this as well. This has really been quite strong. Now we did dip at the end of today. I mean, we're still dipping, right? The day's not done, a half hour left of the trading day. But here's the pullback here. But still, it's been actually a really excellent trend relative to the S&P 500. I want to dive into that just a second. Let's hit one more view of our sectors. Sorry, I want to plug this in too, just to see what we're moving. When we're looking at a relative strength comparison to the SPX, and now comparing the SPX price performance relative to all of its 11 sectors, what's moving here? Well, technology down, communication services down, um, a lot of other things are down. RE's up, industrials, healthcare we looked at, staples actually this week to a degree. Discretionary came down towards the end, but look at financials. We talked about that, and energy. So a lot of up, some kind of sideways in here too. Utilities, materials. But this is going to be an interesting theme. What this tells me is that the rotation theme is still in effect. When we go here now and look at our markets and sectors, let me go to the beginning. There we go. So when we look at our markets and sectors, rotation has played a role. We're seeing those companies bounce up higher. We're going to see breadth indications as well. I just want to dive right into a breadth indication that we've seen. What has continued to go higher despite the ES kind of rounding a little bit at the top over here? It's not much. I mean, it's just like a day or two to pull us down at this point, right? Is what we're seeing. But when we look at breadth across roughly 2.7 thousand plus stocks, because this is the NYSE, advancers, decliners, folks, that's clearly an upward move. Higher highs and higher lows. Now, you got to say that's a positive, and we're still seeing this as potential signs for maybe a continuation of that summer rally. It's just really interesting what happens over here. I think the wild card here, honestly, is oil coming through the Iran situation still. And then what I mentioned just on top of that with the Red Sea, things along those lines. So watch that close is maybe a key driver because, we're getting a little bit of a mixed bag on the economic numbers, but mainly good. It's always looking at what's going forward, though. And remember, the price of energy going up could cause something to change, but the rotation is in effect here. There is your SPXEW, the equal weight. So if we just take a look at our market weighting, we we cancel all these out. We shrink NVIDIA down to an average box size, so they're all equal. That's what you get. It's weighted equally across the board. Pretty good. All else equal, it's really been a good performance. So another indication of market breadth out there. Now, here we are with our Hindenburg Omen, right? The 52s, lows and highs, a fair number of highs and lows. You'll get the spike. We haven't had the spikes for a little bit. In fact, they were just basically ended right there, but we were getting actually some 52-week new lows over here. I think we're getting a bounce in the general market, though. That breadth might be helping us. Again, this is really it kind of becomes an issue when you do get the spikes consistently. And this is a weekly chart, but you're getting weekly changes because if you get a lot of 52-week new highs and lows, a lot of times the market can fall into a chasm and kind of break. And this is a really fascinating one to look at the top because if you're getting a downward trend and those omens are spiking with it. So downward trend one, omen spikes two, a large number of highs and lows still being made here. It can break to the downside if you're getting to, it can break to the upside if you're trending up. It can break to the downside if you're breaking down. But the point is here is it can break quickly and it can be an additional force to the move. Upside if there are no omens, and maybe there were initially. Downside on the other, if you are downtrending. Okay, let's continue on. Sounds good. And holding kind of steady, flat in terms of new NYSE highs. You've just been in this range. It would be interesting if the markets bounce back and we did see a spike over here. That could be a positive even towards the end of the year, but we shall see on something like that. Now, coming over here, seasonality, that really does represent, this is a 10-year seasonality, Jan to December. Where are we at relatively speaking? Let me say this first of all. You can see over here, we're up on the year. Despite the last few days, we're clearly up from the historical average moves of the market. It generally this time of year is right about there. I don't have a number on that. That'd be cool to see right up top, but it's you'd have to say just below maybe 7%, roughly, just below 7 or real close to 7%. So we're up higher than that, getting close to 2% higher, even with this pullback. But the key point I wanted to note is just the general trend of the average, right? You can see it. And I would say this, there's your summer rally, which can be mid-August, late August, if you average in the last 10 years. This is the average, though. We can get changes there, but there you go. There's your pullback right there. All right. So, it's interesting. There could still be an upward move, but it just sort of remains to be seen on this. You have to say, though, seasonally speaking, that it looks a lot like more sort of strength. I mean, in terms of what you could get seasonally, anything could be, happen on any given year, but we're still showing upward moves on average mid-August to end of August, really, before you get sort of the pullback there. All right. And how are investors reacting to this? Well, here's the stacks. This is the highest read that we've had on the stacks in really, it's actually been quite some time. If you look over here, the stacks has been like, well, let's see. Right over here, June was the highest read on the stacks right there in terms of, Schwab Trading Activity Index right over there. So breaking that prior level. So for the first time actually in a while, we did actually get the stacks to make a higher high and a higher low with the market over here. So just connecting those lines right there and there. So that was interesting to see investors coming in. The highest we've actually seen, I mean, at least in the time frame that we're looking at here. Well, is it? Let's see. All. Oh, well, there you go. So all would have been actually, yeah, this is going to be, I want to say, kind of losing track of those years. But anyways, we can see where we're at right there. Moving up. We've been behind the curve for sure. This is kind of investors leading the way, anticipating the market going higher. Now they've kind of jumped back a little bit, bounced higher, even though we're, below market performance, relatively speaking. So wanted to highlight that in terms of Schwab. And just a quick note, by the way, this is good information here on this. It's got some additional details in here, like top net sales, top net buys, SpaceX, NVIDIA, Micron. Micron's actually up today. Microsoft, Amazon. A lot of these had bounced earlier in the week too, right? Mag 7. And just a quick note down here, if you ever wanted to read what the Schwab Activity Index is, proprietary behavior-based index that is designed to indicate the sentiment of individual investors' portfolios by measuring what investors actually have been doing and how they have actually how they were actually positioned in the market. So we're looking at that when we focus in on that bit. All right, SPX on a shorter term chart. How does this triangle look when we zoom in, I should say, and look at a 30-minute chart, which is kind of a, it's an interesting one to take a look at. A lot more data we're getting on a 30-minute chart as opposed to the daily. If we wanted to look at a specific price pattern that we're getting, because the S&P 500 we saw, it's kind of like this triangle and then just flat and then sort of dip today, um, is where we're at. And that is the dip we're seeing right here. But a quick note on that you'd also see on the daily, but very clearly on the 30-minute, higher low, higher low, higher low, higher low of, we did make a higher high, and we'll have to just wait and see what happens over here, right? As we zoom back out and take a look at this. So that's going to be interesting to keep an eye on as well. There is a look at our NASDAQ. By the way, the NASDAQ, we got this from Sharon a while back, but this is just NDXE is the symbol. NDXE in the pink line. How is the NDXE doing? Well, NDXE had been holding up, if make everything equal weight, it's still holding up. I mean, it's it's a little bit higher than today's move, but remember the NDX is very much correlated to technology, right? Just collectively, it's just a bigger index, just a much more higher component that technology carries within it, right? So there's not a lot here to see. So different from the SPXEW, 11 sectors there, right? Outside that range. Now, as we get into it, we're just kind of wrapping this up. I did want to hit the volume profile and one other indicator too, just before we're done on this. But looking at a 1-year chart, you can see that the point of control, or the biggest number of shares, that did occur just above 6,800. Now, if you really want to zoom in and really kind of look at what's more relevant here, because we're really looking at support resistance levels up top. Now, we can see that there might have been a big, see that volume node, a lot of buyers coming in here and just a lot of activity. Not buyers, but activity, buying and selling. So this makes sense, and this kind of confirms here. Let's get yellow. This confirms that this is really resistance, and it's confirmed by just the number of trades. But also, you're getting it right down here too. This doesn't always line up with support and resistance, which is interesting. But if I had to look at the markets and say on the ES, we're just utilizing this 7,400 low end support, upper end as it stands right now in terms of resistance, 7,600. So if you break above that, it could be interesting. And a cool little tool we've talked about this before, is just using the alerts on here. So I'm just going to go like this. I'm actually going to raise it just slightly above those prior levels. Let's zoom in so we can actually see this. So here we go. That's a 6-month chart. So we knocked out the other, the first 6 months, and you can see really those volume nodes even better right there and there. Point of control, the most volume over the past 6 months, clearly that red line right there. Traders, when we take all of this data and we present it on a horizontal chart, it's coming in right there. So that can sort of bolster resistance. So what I'd like to do is just take advantage of some of the technology on the platform, this capabilities. Right click just near that top, go down here, create an alert. Okay, and we can do this too. Let me do this. We know where it's at here. We have, I'm going to go ahead and just put it on the S&P 500. It might be a little bit more familiar to, as prices are going up, but you have a general idea where that's going to be at. You can always reference the ES as well. But if I just went like right here, clicked, just let me know when we break above that high. And maybe you're watching the market close enough. But if you're away, you wanted to be texted the message or emailed the message, you could just say this, breaking higher, breakout, breakout question mark. Just make sure that you set the sound mobile down below that checkbox. I'm going to go ahead and set it. And then also up top under setup, make sure you go up top here. Got to do this. And you got to go to application settings, go to notifications and put in the email or that phone number so that you can be text that information. Now, a quick note on this, I just want to state this because I did bring up alerts. Now, alerts aren't guaranteed to be delivered or delivered at any specific speed or time frame. Should not be used as a replacement for actively being aware of your positions. Enough said. Have I had issues with alerts? No. My alerts during the day have come through, but we just wanted to bring that point up to you as well. Okay, so it's a cool tool to have there. Everybody, that was a lot of information. Everybody ready for the weekend? This is it. Well, we're here. We did it. Folks, if you got value out of the presentation, just do me a favor, smash that like button so we know that it is valuable, that remains a key component of importance to us as well. Be sure to subscribe to the Trader Talks channel. And thank you for all of the comments in the chat. Thank you, Cam, for your help in the chat as well. Everybody, I wish you all a fantastic weekend. The mountains are calling me. I got to get on my bike here. Go do some mountain biking. But I hope you have a fantastic weekend wherever you might be. Take care, everybody. See you next time.